You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, I'm Joe Heath.
I'm Toni Heath.
And this is the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon.
Next time, I'm going to say my name first, so you have to come up with a joke.
I don't like that plan.
It's great.
Today we're going to be talking about the first serial of the 19th season of Doctor Who, the first Fifth Doctor serial. If you don't count that little bit, he was at the end of Logopolis.
I do not.
Me either. Castrovalva, which consists of 4 episodes that aired from January 4th, 1982 to January 12th, 1982. I believe it's almost a year after the last episode.
True facts!
And I'm going to give a special shout out to Matt Golden for getting us these episodes.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
Golden!
You can check him out at MatthewGolden.net. Returning to talk to the...
Great
Yes,
so far.
I'm going to start that again. And we have a returning guest here to talk to us, with us about it. I still fucked that all up.
You're very good at podcasts.
But anyway, Ben Paddon's here.
Yay!
Welcome back.
Thank you. I was brought here under false pretenses because I thought we were going to be discussing Castlevania, which is a wonderful little video game. But I'll talk Doctor Who with any fucker any day. Why not?
Well, I mean, Castrovalva is a port of Castlevania.
Yes, I mean, this is actually, it predates Castlevania by about 5 years. So in many ways, I think Castlevania is an adaptation of Castrovalva, and I am now about to start writing a 47-minute YouTube video about that. It makes sense. In Castlevania, there's a lot of backtracking. The end.
But now you have to do it because you announced it on this podcast. Like, you just gotta.
Yeah, there's a lot of backtracking. The villain is kind of an over-the-top caricature that doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's a box. The end.
I have to imagine they both have castles.
Yeah, probably.
So, Ben, how have things been with you?
Been pretty good. Yesterday, at time of recording, I don't know when this episode will be released, but yesterday, being February 1st in the chronology of human time, we recorded Serial 3 of the second season of the Game of Rassilon, which we're very excited about. That was a lot of fun. And we are getting ready to record Serial 4, which is, I imagine, at actually the time you release this, neither of those serials would have started to have been released. At time of recording, actually, episode 2 of the first serial of season 2 has just dropped. If you're interested in a Doctor Who role-playing game actual play podcast, by the way, if you want to squeeze more Doctor Who into your day-to-day life via the audio form involving a certain amount of dice rolling, you can check out the Game of Rassilon. You can go to thegameofrassilon.com, or you can go to thedeath.zone, or adventuresintimeand.space. I'm squeezing the plug in at the beginning. You can't stop me. It's already happened. This is where we are now.
Right, so you did that yesterday, February 1st, which means today is a very special holiday.
It is.
It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah, which means I look forward to recording this podcast with you again tomorrow.
Me too. Did you see the Jeep commercial? I saw it this morning.
I haven't seen it yet. I just saw a news article about it while I was watching Castrovalva, but I didn't want to risk pausing Castrovalva to watch Bill Murray make out with a puppet groundhog. I don't really know what's going on in the thumbnail that I saw, but it looked unseemly.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's a commercial for a Jeep.
I don't need a Jeep, so that commercial's lost on me.
Right, but you get to see some additional Groundhog Day jokes.
Are they jokes?
Here's the thing. Groundhog Day is a fun movie. I enjoy that movie. It is kind of sad. I've decided, even though I haven't watched the finale of The Good Place yet, that Groundhog Day takes place in a post-Good Place world, because how else do you explain what happens? But I don't feel the need to kind of... We need not have a Groundhog Day cinematic universe, is where I'm going with this. We don't... That's not something that humanity has been clamoring for. And I'm also kind of against weaponized nostalgia as a means of selling me things I do not need. Like, as an example, a Jeep. Not going to buy a Jeep, so why would I watch this Groundhog Day commercial?
That's fair. That being said, I am a fan of the musical. I've heard the musical. I haven't seen it, but the musical's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tim Minchin. You can't beat Tim Minchin. He's fantastic. Like, the Matilda musical is one of my all-time favorites. Like, when I grow up played at my funeral. Like, no joke. That when I die, that is what I want everyone to hear as my coffin is being lowered into the lion pit to be torn apart by lions.
I think you talk about your death every podcast.
Single time.
I don't think it's... listen, I'm not doing it on purpose. It just comes up organically in conversation. I feel like I have to tell people that a lot.
Every episode has just expanded the mythology of your funeral. I like it. It's thematic.
I love the idea of, like, anyone who wants to plan my funeral has to listen to every episode of the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon that I've appeared on. Like that. Like, this is gonna become my last will and, like, legally my last will and testament. By the time we hit survival at the end of the Sylvester McCoy era, we'll know exactly who's getting what I want planned at my funeral. I'm not saying that I won't survive past that point, because I'm sure you guys will be doing, McGann and the New Who stuff, but... McGann and the New Who, by the way, great band name. But survival feels like a fitting place to kind of put a lid on the last will and testament part of my of the death saga. If anyone's listening... can compile all of the information about my death and funeral and thereof into one easily manageable document. I'm all for that.
Fans, super fans, get to it.
If you're a notary public as well, that makes things even easier.
I'm pretty sure like 90% of our audience is that. So
A notary public?
Yeah,
they're like fully licensed. Yeah.
The last time I had to like find a notary, I was like, how do you become one? Because it seems neat. And it's like, it's kind of easy. So I think I'm just going to do it.
You should.
Yeah.
Then you can notarize shit.
And then you can do this will.
Then I can be in charge of Ben Paddon's will.
Perfect. It's full circle.
You can notarize your own podcast as a legally binding document.
I will say, though, you have to prove that you're like a trustworthy person. So that might be my downfall.
Oh.
Yeah.
Especially if they listen to this. With regards to Castrovalva and discussing it, is that a thing that, strictly speaking, is necessary? Do we have to do that? Can we not talk about like quilting or bees or the Super Bowl is happening? That's also something we could discuss.
We could talk about the Super Bowl. Toni has plans for it.
I have plans.
Yeah, because you don't actually care about the Super Bowl, but you do.
I am making Velveeta cheese dip because all the commercials got to me. And I was like, yeah, that sounds real good, actually.
You can make Velveeta cheese dip in the back of your new Jeep.
What was it you said earlier? You don't celebrate football?
I don't celebrate football, but I do appreciate the time. I like the food and the company.
I'm a cultural football fan. I do all of the like celebrations, but I never really supported a team.
Exactly. I'm just here for like the Little Weenies and the cheese dip.
Little Weenies and the Cheese Dip is another great band name.
They opened for McGann and the New Who.
Man, this is actually kind of a weird episode for me. This is the first classic Who serial that I watched. Like, all the way through.
Ever. Before we started this podcast.
All the way through?
Yeah, well, for a while, it was kind of hard to find episodes. It was like you would watch them online and like half of them would have been taken down. I was going back through, and I don't know why, but I was going back through and I was watching every Regeneration.
Just the Regeneration episodes, not the whole serial, just the episodes.
I think it's just because it was like the kind of thing that it was like, then I'll know that. That's the kind of like trivia thing. And then I'll have that knowledge. And then I'll know a little bit of each of them and I'll figure out where I want to start. But like, this was the first one that I watched and I was like, I have to watch the next one. And I watched, instead of just watching individual episodes, I watched the whole serial because I liked it so much.
Interesting.
And in my defense, it's not because it's a good episode, a good serial necessarily.
It's just goofy. It's particularly at the beginning where it's picking up exactly where Logopolis left off. It's so bafflingly goofy and so... It's kind of 70s in that early 80s kind of way in a lot of places, particularly in the score. Like, the score alternates between what if we wanted to do the soundtrack for Starsky and Hutch but we only had a synth? And also the music for, like, I'm wandering around a demade DOS version of Myst.
I'm not gonna lie, everything you just said is a selling point to me. But also, it's two things, which are deeply embarrassing, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. One, the Doctor is sick in it, which is greatly appealing to me. Two, Adric is, like, being held captive, also greatly appealing to me.
But not because she doesn't like Adric, but because she likes characters that are need rescuing, I guess.
Yeah.
Adric, it kind of has like a BDSM awakening in this episode, which is pretty great.
He still hasn't become annoying yet.
Also, like, I watched this
that
one,
to happen.
and then I watched, which, like, endeared me to him immediately, right? Because he's suffering, so I'm like, that's great. I love that guy. And then I watched the one where he died, and then I, like...
was very sad about it.
Yeah, I was like, this is sad. What a tragic, sad character. And then I, like, found out that he was apparently very hated. I was like, no, why?
He's very much the Wesley Crusher of 80s Doctor Who.
So it was a very weird journey that I had.
Yeah. I haven't disliked Adric yet. So I feel like it's gonna happen soon. But so far he's been fine.
He's just been fine.
Yeah. Nothing, like, amazing, but fine.
Yeah. He's just there a lot of the time. That's all.
So let's dive into episode 1, which I have called the Zero Room, because that sounds cool. So there's a couple of things that are the first time that happens in Doctor Who. This is the first episode that has a pre-opening credits scene.
Yeah, first cold open.
Yeah, which is it's basically just a recap.
Yeah, it's an abridged recap of the regeneration at the end of Logopolis, and that was done for two reasons. Number one, it was done because it was a year since Logopolis had aired its last episode.
Doctor Who just does that sometimes.
And two, they needed to like make up a couple of minutes at the end of the episode. Now that may not be true. I may just be saying that because I forgot what my second point was, which I think gives us our first faux fact of the session.
Woo! I love the Ben faux facts. And also, this is actually at the end of the serial, I guess, or whatever. But this is the first time that the Doctor is credited as the Doctor and not Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And also, we get a new face in space.
I adore insisting on that the character's name is Doctor, abbreviated DR Who, and not letting it go.
Oh, it makes so many people angry. I love watching people get so frustrated. And here's the thing, there's so much stuff in canon to justify his name, or their name, actually being Doctor Who. So much stuff in canon justifies the Doctor's name as being Doctor Who. But there is a certain corner of fandom that will react like you just harpooned their dog if you tell them that their name is Doctor Who.
But it is, though, and it's canon.
I don't honestly care, but I will, like, take the role of being offended by it, just so that the comedy
so that we
happens.
can do a bit.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about you.
Okay, so should we do a quick run through of that bit right now?
Sure. No! What?
No, I not.
It's not
Hey!
Oh, sorry,
You're jumping. You are stepping
sorry.
on Tony's line. Now we're going to take it back to one. We're going to take it from the top.
Sorry.
Okay, so whenever you're ready, obviously Tony, you have to say
Thank
your
you.
bit first.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, and action.
You know, canonically, the character's name is Doctor Who.
Dear listener, what you could not see was Joe shaking his fist like the world's oldest man.
Oh, I am also dying, so I feel like the world's oldest
Yeah, that
man.
probably didn't do your throat any favors.
No,
You
not
should
at
not
all.
be screaming.
I love that we are 15 minutes into recording and so far we've got to... They recapped the end of the last series.
Yeah, so next note, new face in space. I'm very excited anytime there's a new face in space.
I love getting to say face in space, and I'll be very sad when it stops being a thing.
They changed the way that the face appears. Did you notice this?
I did
It's like
not.
line by line or something.
Yeah, like Venetian blinds kind of effect.
When do they stop doing that? Do they do that through the rest of Classic?
I mean,
Who?
I don't know.
Up to Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy has a completely different title sequence. They tweak it a little bit for Colin Baker. They add some sparklies around the edge. But Sylvester McCoy has an entirely different theme, opening animation. It's very, very different. Whereas this title sequence that we've had since season 18, it basically remains through all of Davison and Baker's run.
But is there a face in space with McCoy?
Oh, there's a face in space. I don't want to ruin too much of it for you, because I think the way that they do the face in space is pretty neat.
I don't remember what happens in the TV movie.
There's no face. There's no space, really. There's the vortex, and there are asteroids in the vortex for some reason.
There's no space for the face.
No. What happens next, please?
They all run back to the TARDIS, dragging the Doctor, and are caught by the Pharaoh's Project guards.
Who call the cops.
And also an ambulance, because the Doctor is all... And they put him in an ambulance. Adric says that they are the alien intelligence that the Pharaoh's Project has been looking for, and to prove this, he points to the sky and says, I came from there.
And here's the thing, you laugh, but as a diversionary tactic, it works. That is absolutely what allows Tegan to see the unattended, loosely hanging keys of the ambulance, which also have like a BMW keychain on them as well. I have a very vague memory of it, even though I just watched it. And she's like, yeah, I'm just going to hop in and steal this ambulance. No, why did they leave the ambulance? Why did they leave that unattended? What's going on? How poorly trained are these ambulance drivers?
They're trying to see that E-space. Also, she steals the ambulance. Nyssa joins in, jumps in the ambulance, and then they just leave Adric. It's like, fuck him, really. I mean, he helped us get away, but not too bothered.
Yeah, they get back in the TARDIS and they're like, oh yeah, Adric. And then, oh yeah, we should probably be upset about this. We definitely left him high and dry, but let's be upset about the fact that he's not here.
He does his best to get to the ambulance, though. He gets grabbed by the guards and bites them.
This is why no one likes Adric, because no one likes a biter.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Just, alright, moving on.
What a great revelation. What a wonderful thing to learn about a good friend.
I mean, that's what this podcast is for. It's just revealing all of our deepest, darkest secrets.
Okay.
And putting them on the internet.
I mean, you did it right at the beginning, talking about your enjoyment of BDSM stuff, basically.
That's not what I said.
It was what was implied.
I feel like it was.
Producers, could we wind the tape back, please? Could we just listen to that again? Adric, it kind of has like a BDSM awakening in this episode, which is pretty great.
Which like endeared me to him immediately, right? Because he's suffering, so I'm like, that's great. I love that guy.
It sounds pretty conclusive to me.
It's more of a hurt comfort thing.
It's like, I know that Ben & Jerry's fish food is bad for me, but it's what I need when I'm sad. And now I want Ben & Jerry's fish food. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
You did it to yourself.
I played myself.
Because I don't even know what that is.
You don't know what Ben & Jerry's... Keep talking about the episode. I'm angry.
I know what Ben & Jerry's is, but I don't know that specific... Is it actually fish food?
It's chocolate. It's caramel. It's tiny pieces of fish-shaped chocolate, and it's named after the band Fish.
Oh, it's fish with a PH.
And you feed it to your fish.
Sounds like Moose Tracks.
It does sound like Moose Tracks. Is it the only good thing that the fish name is attached to?
I'm not having heard any of their music, I couldn't possibly comment.
So where were we at? Everyone gets into the TARDIS except for Adric, and the Master shows up in his column and proceeds to zap everyone, and then he just leaves.
Nothing sexual about that. Let's move on.
So I guess the TARDIS has weapons capabilities because it just shoots lightning.
Did you see the effect they did for this, by the way? It was like a layered, like 3-color animated GIF of like these different layers of electricity just kind of looping for a little bit. Like less than a second of looped GIF lightning. It was pretty great.
That was cutting edge technology.
It was state of the floor technology.
I like that every time the Master's TARDIS dematerializes, instead of like the TARDIS dematerializing sound, it's just his laughter, his evil laughter.
In fairness, the sound the TARDIS makes when it dematerializes is pretty funny.
And it leaves behind a kneeling Adric.
Kinky.
So something the Master clearly did something to him. We will find out what eventually. But they get Adric in the TARDIS, the proper TARDIS, not the Master's TARDIS. He's like very rude and not talking to anybody. Presses some buttons on the consoles and just fucks off. Meanwhile,
the Doctor is kind of just ambling through the corridors, unraveling his scarf, hooking it to things. This is something I genuinely love about Peter Davison, because even though I don't think he quite pulls it off 100% of the time, as he's wandering the halls of the TARDIS, he's kind of being different previous incarnations of the Doctor. And I think the ones that are most successful, his Hartnell is okay. His Troughton is very, very good. Like, it felt exceptionally Troughton-y. I don't know if I spotted a Pertwee in there, and his Baker was not Baker at all. But when he's being Troughton, you really feel like, oh hell, this is this is Troughton.
It's fun to watch, that's for sure. Even if it's not like the best impersonations ever, it's just like, oh, he's doing the thing.
I think the best one Doctor impersonating another that the show has ever done is Peter Capaldi talking to himself on in the cabin in Mummy on the Orient Express, where when he's doing the other voice, he's doing Tom Baker, and he really nails that. Peter Davison doing Troughton is pretty good, though, too.
I do like his little Hartnell chuckles, though, when he's grabbing his lapels.
Oh, yeah. When he's speaking, his Hartnell is not necessarily, like, quite there, but when he's imitating Hartnell's, like, little verbal tics, that marvelous. That's solid. And as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I'm currently going through The Pilgrimage again. I've just started season 8, so I'm on Pertwee's second season, but Troughton and Hartnell are still very, very fresh in my mind, because I just finished watching their respective stories, in one case very recently, and in the other case just a couple of months ago. It's kind of nice to see those personalities through the lens of another Doctor. I always like that. It's one of my favourite bits of this serial.
And that's a thing that happens a lot in this serial, is sort of callbacks and references to sort of Doctor Who lore.
Oh, yeah, like, this was the period in Doctor Who production history where they realised, oh, we have, I'm going to call it, I don't know what the right word is, like a fandom, like a kingdom of fans, a fandom. And so they started getting a lot more kind of inside baseball, like self-referential about stuff that had happened in the show previously, which was not something that Doctor Who did a tremendous amount back in the day. Like, Pertwee's second Dalek story is, almost a complete remake of the very, very first Dalek story.
Nearly every Dalek story is a remake of the previous Dalek story.
Because it's like, well, no one's seen this before. How would they possibly watch it? So we'll just kind of do the same thing again. And now Doctor Who, nearly 20 years in, is acknowledging that, oh, we have fans who have either have been watching this show for a while or who have read books like The Making of Doctor Who, which was a very, very recent book about the production of the show, who have a familiarity, if not like a memory of watching things like The Ice Warriors and The Web of Fear, have read about these stories and have a working knowledge of them, even if they haven't necessarily seen them. The 80s is really when Doctor Who fandom, as we know it, really as we know it now as well, is born. And it's really when the show kind of starts to properly embrace its past beyond the idea of, well, we have to do a Dalek story and we have to do a Cyberman story. It really kind of, for better or worse, shifts the way that the show is produced, because we also have people like Ian Levine, Ian Levine was a huge super fan of the show. He was a radio DJ in the UK and a music producer. He kind of became an unofficial continuity consultant for the show during the 80s as well. The way that the show is both consumed by the audience, by a certain section of the audience, and also the way the show is being produced is changed by the realization that fandom exists.
And that's why there's so much hurt comfort in this episode.
That is a very fanficky idea.
And Doctor Who only gets fanfickier from here, because instead of writing for a general audience, they start writing for a very narrow audience, and that is in part what will go on to kill the show over the next 7 years. Sorry to bum you all out.
I hope it comes back eventually.
Would be nice.
So, the Doctor's going around being out of it and referencing previous Doctors and things, and calling Adric different names. I think he calls him the Brigadier and Jamie.
Brigadier Jamie definitely comes up. He mentions Joe at some point, but I think that happens in a later episode, not in this one.
And he's basically like, the regeneration's not taking. Something's going wrong. And then he's like, I need to find the Zero Room.
It's the room where he keeps the dog from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Because everyone likes a dog.
Well, he had K9.
Who he also mentioned several times.
He's definitely a dog person. Meanwhile, Tegan and Nyssa, who I keep wanting to call Tegan and Sarah...
The Doctor's companions, Adric, Tegan, and Sarah,
are trying to find a databank because they think that the TARDIS has just been programmed to just fly in like just a straight pattern. It's probably going to crash into something, so they're trying to figure out how to stop that.
Hey, what are they going to crash into?
A planet?
No, they look it up and they realize what they're heading towards.
Oh, right, yes. Well, that's after they have this whole conversation about they're trying to figure out how to work the databank, and they discuss index files. Recursions. She's like, if we could find the index file for the index file. And then she's like, that's math. It's the whole thing about recursions and I don't know. And then she just starts talking about ifs. I don't know, theoretical stuff. And then she's like, if, index file. And I'm like, I don't...
So much of this is just filler. Like, if you were if you were editing together a movie version of this story, this scene is not just on the cutting room floor, but is, like, thrown out of the window. It's wholly unnecessary. How does computer? I don't know. What if? Ooh, if. Boom. Why? No, shut up.
It felt simultaneously like, it felt like that scene in Warriors Gate when they were talking about, sort of like flipping a coin and binary stuff, which is sort of the motif of that whole episode. And like recursions are definitely a motif of this whole episode. But it also felt like anytime the Riddler left a riddle on the 60s Batman show, that level of like, aha, of course. But yes, they find that they're on a programmed course to Event 1. It's the Big Bang. We find out later.
Also, would be a great name for a Doctor Who convention.
Or the Big Bang would be a great episode title for a Doctor Who episode.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that's highly unlikely.
Maybe if it ever comes back. Maybe.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Meanwhile, the Doctor is shedding all of his clothes.
Yeah, he's walking down the halls of the TARDIS naked and just kind of burbling to himself.
They do, like, a very intense close-up on his shoe. Just so you know, he's not wearing that shoe anymore. And Adric gets tired of following him and just runs off on his own to look for the Zero Room. The Master is watching him and he's like, ha ha ha, you'll never help the Doctor. You're mine now. And then takes him, I guess.
Yeah, I will say, it's super vague as to whether this is Adric and he's being hypnotized or kidnapped, because there's definitely a point where the Master refers to either the Adric that he has in captivity or the Adric that is wandering around the halls of the TARDIS as even these, like, something along the lines of even these simulations have a will of their own, which I guess kind of seeds the idea of, you know, the climax of this episode, but it's super duper vague as to whether, you know, the Adric he has is real, or the Adric that's on the ship is real, or whether either of them are an illusion, or if they're both the same Adric. Like, it's not super clear. It's very vague, and it becomes clearer. I guess, like, part 4 clarifies a lot of stuff on that front, but watching it back, like, and even by the time you get to episode 4, you would have forgotten the stuff you saw in episode 1, right? Like, that stuff, that was when Doctor Who was, at this point, Doctor Who's running on weekdays and they're doing, 2 episodes a week? That's a week ago. Like, I'm not going to remember that. That's a week and a half ago at this point.
Not to mention, most of the stuff that it's referencing was established in Legopolis, which was a year ago. And a lot of this I didn't pick up on either. I was just cleaning up my notes and reading the wiki. It's the block transfer computation thing that the Legopolitopolans would do. So it's basically Adric is creating these things, and he creates himself
with his mathematical genius.
Yeah,
it's such a weird play to, like, pull that trick out of your hat a full year after the previous story. That just feels like, to me, such a weird choice to make. And I know that they did a marathon of previous Doctor Who serials called The Five Faces of Doctor Who just before Castrovalva aired. So Logopolis was the serial that they chose to air to represent the Fourth Doctor. So it would have been recent in people's minds, but
if they watched it,
that's if they watched it. If someone thinks, oh well, I watched Logopolis last year, I don't need to watch this, and then they sit down and watch Castrovalva and they think, what the bloody hell is going on? Which they would say because they're English. I can absolutely see someone being lost in what's happening a full calendar year.
I did watch this episode, like, without any context. Without any context of what came before. So one, when, like, the Watcher showed up, I was like, that was weird. And, like, the recap, I was like, I'm just gonna assume that some stuff happened last time. But yeah, I didn't fully understand, like, what was happening. I was like, I guess Adric is making the stuff happen with his brain. I don't know how or why, but okay.
But he's in trouble, and that makes my heart aflutter.
A little bit, yeah.
So, Tegan and Nyssa...
Tegan and Sarah.
Yes, Tegan and Sarah find the scarf that's been thrown out, and she says that the Doctor is unraveled in more ways than one. And I was like, I hate that and love it.
The Doctor's unraveled in more ways than one. SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah, that's how it goes down, right?
Yeah. I want to take a brief second, since I've mentioned this good joke, to talk about the Tegan and Sarah, or Nyssa, their acting ability.
Oh.
Not so great. They sometimes feel like they're acting in different rooms, even though they're in the same scene together.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Tegan delivers a lot of lines like, well, that's what happened. And Nyssa has
Nyssa frequently looks like she's not looking at anyone else in the room.
She's very, like, dead-eyed, yeah. Just staring at nothing and through things while saying her lines. I like Nyssa a little bit better than Tegan, though.
Yeah, I like Tegan's character, but sometimes she'll say a line and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think I like the idea of Tegan better than I do the execution of Tegan.
Maybe she'll get better.
Maybe. So, the Doctor finds a recorder and plays it a little bit, which is another reference to the second Doctor. But he decides to trade it out for a cricket bat.
Which this is when like the soundtrack really kicks in with the goofiness.
Because
it's letting you know he's changing into his outfit now.
And he full on he gets his whole, like, his Fifth Doctor look. That sort of beige, boring dad look, right?
Oh yeah, he super looks like a dad. He's
got a cool hat. But, like, his colors are very, like, neutral. We've come from a lot of Doctors that have been very vibrant, I feel like.
Yeah, he's kind of a beige bear situation.
A little bit of red. He doesn't have the celery yet, but that will come later. And I still don't understand it.
He has an allergy.
Yeah, but that doesn't come up to his very last story. And even then, that only happened because Peter Davison said, look, if you're going to write me out of the show, you have to explain where the fuck this celery comes from.
Apparently, he doesn't even like celery. There's a scene where he eats celery in this episode, and apparently the first take he just spat it right back out because he hates celery. But the Doctor finds Tegan and Nyssa find the Doctor and some lipstick on the walls, which is like, I guess, Hansel and Greteling their way through the TARDIS. But, like, here's the thing. They just draw lines. There's no way to indicate which direction to go.
But they know they've been there.
I guess, but I would put little arrows,
All right.
That would just clarify things, I feel like. Because, like, what if you, like, get lost a little bit and then come back and, like, oh, I found the wall with the lipstick. But it goes both directions. Where do I go? Left or right? Which way do I go, Max? Like, you don't know.
I feel like you're thinking about this entirely too much.
Maybe, but still, it's bad.
Okay.
They should have put arrows on the lines. But they find the Zero Room. It's, like, filters out the universe and its complexities, so there's like nothing going on in the room, and because the universe is so complex and confusing, that's what's fucking up his regeneration. So he goes in there to just chill out in the Zero Room, and he chills out so much that he floats. He
takes a little hover nap.
Not a bad effect, by the way. It looked pretty convincing.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that can be absolutely recreated by even a low-tier YouTuber now. But at the time, it was like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool.
You gotta think of it in the context of the time. He just starts mind-talking to them all. Because he's not actually talking. He's projecting his mind. Saying, I'm gonna need all of you. I will need your courage and your heart and Adric's math.
Yes.
And he's like, where is Adric? And they're like, because they haven't told him, because they don't want to bother him.
He's out golfing. He's golfing, it's fine.
And then Adric projects himself into the room to say, hey, I've been caught. Don't go where you're going. It's a trap.
Hey, what up, fam? Here at you again with another video, just to let you know I've been caught by the master. Don't forget to smash that bell, like, share, and subscribe.
And then he just turns off. And that's when the master is like, oh, it started to get its own free will there at the end or something. Nyssa returns to the console room to change the course, but on her way there notices that the lipstick is melting. It getting hot. The Doctor hears the cloister bells, tries to leave. Tegan says, no, sir, because he just immediately leaves and passes out, and she drags him back in. And then she's like, I'll go take care of it. And she leaves, and then the Doctor leaves anyway. But they find out that they're heading back to the Big Bang. And they're like, oh no. And then the Master comes onto their view screen and just like, bye! And waves. Like it's the end of the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
And that's the end of episode 1. We are now into episode 2, which I have called The Zero Cabinet. What was your title?
Doc in a Box.
That's pretty
good.
That's good.
That's better.
So, this episode starts with the Master kind of...
Welcome back, y'all! And he waves at the screen.
Yeah, he's like, hey, your shit's fucked. Okay, bye. Basically kind of just beams into the TARDIS to gloat a little bit.
When they lower the screen again, I love the fact that Anthony Ainley is leaning back, so it looks like he's about to be crushed, but he's like, oh no! but it's just the way he was positioned when the screen was being lowered.
Also, Nyssa says, "That face, I hate it," which is nice.
A nice bit of continuity.
Because that her daddy.
Hi, Dad.
Basically, the doctor is like rolling around the TARDIS floor while the TARDIS tries to help.
Right.
The TARDIS opens up a medicine cabinet and just throws medicine at him. There's a line there that I really like, though, where he's going through all the different things, and one of the medicines says the solution. He says, "Oh, if only you were."
Can't argue with that.
I mean, it's not necessarily the TARDIS. It could just be the TARDIS rocking about.
But
it's the TARDIS.
I mean, it shoots a wheelchair at him.
Right, so we can reference the Third Doctor.
Is that what the Third Doctor reference is?
Yeah, I mean, remember the first episode of the Third Doctor? He does his little wheelchair escape from the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was just an opportunity, because here's the thing, I want you to remember, when I rewatched it this morning to prep for this podcast recording, I watched it at double speed, so I did watch Peter Davison just kind of going, wee, 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 around the console room, and honestly, it's the only way, I won't watch this episode at regular speed ever again.
It's pretty fun just watching regular speed. I can only imagine twice the hilarity.
You don't have to imagine, you have a computer.
That's true. I think we need to just take that scene, though, and then dub in, the Benny Hill music, right?
Yes, that's really what humanity, it's what we deserve.
So, anyway, because everything's so bad, that's making the Doctor's brain work right.
Because of the excitement.
It's because really, the problem that he's having is his, synapses are misfiring and stuff. But basically is competent enough just to keep them from getting dead.
He tells them what to do, and Nyssa rotates the nipple arrow.
The what?
There's I don't know, she pulls out that one roundel, and there's just a big pink glowing thing, and she twists this little arrow on it.
Go on.
When we were watching it, I said, rotate the nipple arrow, because that's what it looked like to me.
That says so much about you, but I don't have time to go into it right now.
It does speak volumes about the type of person that he is.
Reversing the polarity gets name dropped here while the Doctor's telling them what to do, which is always good and fun. They basically need to dump a whole bunch of rooms from the TARDIS. They're going to use that as fuel to get out of the Big Bang, I guess.
Yeah, push them out.
And they jettison a bunch of things, but they don't know. There's no way to say what they are and aren't going to jettison.
Yeah, because they ask the Doctor, and stuff has calmed down enough that he just reverts back to...
He kind of passes out again.
And he's like, ask K9, and then just falls asleep.
They jettison everything. They don't jettison the
console
room, but they do jettison the Zero room, which is pretty bad, because the Doctor kind of needs it.
Yeah, that's rough.
So they build this little cabinet that they just carry him around in, which is great.
Yeah, so it's the dock in the box. Sorry, hang on. Maybe my microphone wasn't turned on. Let me just... Okay. It was like it's your dock in a box.
Yeah. It's also a really good joke because they're also needing to land because they look up a place to take the Doctor because they don't have the Zero room, and they look up in the data bank what's some places to go? And it's
what's Zero room?
Why not try Castrovalva? So they're flying there, and Tegan's gonna land it, and he's like, Tegan. The Doctor's like, Tegan's gonna land it.
Alright.
That's really hard. It's more. There's more to it than just flicking a switch. Cut to Tegan in the console room, well, here we go, and she flicks a switch, and then everything crashes.
Ta-da! And in fairness, she does almost stick the landing.
Almost.
It's a little crooked.
Did they actually tilt the set? Because I feel like they were doing really good leaning acting.
No, it was just camera work. They can't tilt the set. That's the studio floor. They didn't tilt the set. They just and you can see at one point the camera guy knocks the camera and the tilt kind of sense a little bit.
But they sold that.
They sold it pretty well.
Most of the time. So basically they've got the Doctor in this box, and they're nowhere near where they need to
I just thought of a great joke. Doc in a box.
Oh man, I loved that! That was good.
Yeah, I like the Lonely Island thing.
Yeah.
It took you a while to get there.
Basically, they're going to have to carry the Doctor the whole way there in this cabinet. But it's fine, because he's going to levitate, and they're going to balance it on the wheelchair. Actually, they end up losing the wheelchair pretty quickly.
rolls into a river and immediately catches on fire.
It does catch on fire.
And then Nyssa also falls in and makes a hilarious face.
They kind of just leave the doctor because he's too heavy at some point. And they're like, oh, we found it. We're just going to climb up there because it's a castle on top of these, like, big rocks. Like, we're just going to climb up there and then, like, go get help and come back.
It's only a model.
And they get, like, halfway up and they're like, this is hard. Maybe we should just go back.
Yeah, they give up super quick.
What was the point of that? This was the point, too, by the way. At, like, episode 1, I had remembered watching the serial before, and I was telling Joe, I was like, this is a good one. I remember this being a good one. And then, like...
By this point in episode 2, I'm like, they've just been fucking walking around for, like, ever. That's all this episode has been. It's been them pushing this box around for, like, 10 minutes.
Yeah, so it was, like, at this point in the episode where I was like, is it? Is it a good one? Maybe my memory is wrong. I don't know if watching this at double speed made any of this go by faster.
A lot of this just kind of whizzed by, to be honest. But the thing is, when you slow down, when you speed up the show, Anthony Ainley speaks like at a normal speed for most of it, because he has kind of a slow drawl in places. Sometimes he speaks too slow, and sometimes he speaks way, way too fast. But somehow the act of, watching it at double speed really kind of nullifies both of those things.
God, literally so much of this episode was just like, they walk here, they walk there, they walk back to the doctor, he's not there anymore. So then they walk back to Castrovalva, and they get in this time because they meet some people. They
climb a wall as well. Let's not underestimate the importance of the wall climb, or the rock climb, I guess.
They climb it twice. They climb it once, and they're like, let's go back, this is too hard. And then in the next episode, they climb it again, because what else are we going to do? Because they climb out the first time, give up, come back, and they find a trail of blood and that the doctor is missing. And that's the cliffhanger. It's the end of episode 2. We're now into episode 3, which I have called Recursive Occlusion, which is also the name of a Choose Your Own Adventure article about Logopolis written by Elizabeth Sandifer, which is amazing, and I recommend it highly.
I would like to also pitch as a title for this episode, hey, that's definitely the master, right?
I've got a fun story about that when we get to it. So
Joe did not notice.
Really?
I mean, I didn't either, because of faces, and, that's not surprising.
Well, you'll find out why when we get to it, why I didn't realize it was the master.
It took you so long.
It took me so long.
You'll find out why after these brief messages. Do you have ad breaks? No? Okay, well then let's crack on.
So, Tegan and Nyssa are surrounded by these people that have been watching them in the last episode. I call them the grill people, because it looks like they've got, big Weber grills or whatever on their heads. But they are surrounded by them, so they run off. They find the doctor, who's just stumbling around by himself, and they're like, Doctor! Doctor! And he's like, Doctor, everyone's looking for him, because he doesn't know who he is. He gets caught by the grill people, says he doesn't know who he is. And they take him to the city, and it turns out they're fine. They were just doing this hunting thing as an exercise program.
Literally to get physical exercise, yes.
Yeah. And then he meets this librarian who's like, I was too tall to fit in the armor. Well, you're tall enough to reach those high shelves, right? He has to explain his joke too, because he's just like, well, that's probably why you're so tall. That's probably why they made you a librarian. And they're like, what? He's like, because high shelves.
And then they laugh too hard at it.
Your wit is returning.
Yeah, he really needs to work on his type 5.
When he meets the librarian for the first time, he's like, I'm the librarian. He's like, you mean books and stuff? They're like, yeah, books and stuff. You guys read?
That's like a baby's toy.
Are you a bunch of nerds? But this is also, they feed him, and this is where he eats celery. And I was like, okay. I guess this is where it comes from. Not sure why, but alright. Okay, so yes, the doctor says he's trying to find the doctor. And they take him to this guy, whose name is Portreeve. Yes, he's the master, but the only thing when he first popped up, I just started uncontrollably laughing and saying, that man has 2 hats! He has a hat on top of another hat!
He has a hat on a hat. I feel like that was deliberately done in an attempt to distract you from the fact that is absolutely Anthony Ainley under all that makeup. And in your case, it fucking worked.
It did. Every time I couldn't pay attention to any of the scenes he was in, Because I was just too busy laughing at that stupid fucking... He had 2 hats!
He had...
Yo, dog, I heard you like hats, so we put a hat on a hat, so you can hat while you hat.
Oh, he's gone again.
There's a brim, a little bit of hat, another brim, and then a whole hat.
He's 2 Monopoly guys. He has twice the power. He can get out of jail for free twice. He came first place in a beauty contest.
He's crying.
Oh my god.
He's gone.
Your husband's broken. It's just us now. It's just us doing the podcast. We can make this podcast whatever we want. Let's make this a good place, Watch-A-Thon.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh.
I cried so much.
We start with the first episode, and Kristen Bell is sitting on a couch, and everything's fine. Oh, I think Joe's back.
I'm back.
Damn it.
What is so funny to you about the idea of
It's just
2 hats?
other hats.
Oh, he's going... No, keep it going, so we can go back to talking about the good place. And then Ted Danson opens the door and beckons her in and explains that she's died, and she's in the good place. It's cool. And she talks... Oh, no, is he back? Damn. Joe, think about those hats.
No, you won't get me the third time.
It has 2 brims. Is it so the first brim can be in the shade? What is the point of that? And then he talks about this guy named Doug who got high and.
Okay.
I got like 4 or 5 minutes into the first episode of The Good Place. Let's see how far. If this happens again, Tony, you and I, this is a podcast within a podcast. We've got to make this work.
Okay, so I did eventually realize it was the Master the second he wasn't wearing the hat. But every scene with the hat, I just couldn't help but laugh at that dumb fucking hat. Okay.
Tell me more about the hat.
I'm done.
You know, he's not the only one with interesting headwear. There's also the librarian, Chardavan.
Actually,
just has a, garbage bin on his, a small little...
They both are. They're both just buckets with, ribbon.
That's a hat!
The only difference is that the Master gets 2 brims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
2 brims Ainley, they call him.
Also, in this episode, they credited Portreeve. They took Anthony Ainley and jumbled up the letters and give him an anagram name so that it wouldn't spoil.
His name was Lantony Amy.
Apparently, they do that again in a later Master serial as well.
Oh yeah, they do that a lot to try to mask the fact that it's him.
It's very obviously him, though. Again, I don't know. I didn't catch it. That fucking hat. Oh, the man has 2 hats. Okay, so then the doctor goes to sleep. Finally, he gets some rest. And Portreeve tells him some shit that I couldn't hear. But I think he says, well, we'll find you the doctor later.
Could you not hear it because you were laughing
I
about
was
his
laughing
hat?
so hard at the fucking hat.
Sorry, I just typed in Anthony Ainley into an anagram generator. I have to tell you my favourite of these anagrams. Tiny Anal Honey.
Nice.
Okay.
I've seen that movie.
He anal tinny, yo. Yo, tiny anal hen.
There's a lot of anal ones.
I just did a search for anal from the list of anagrams it gave me because I'm a child.
So, Doctor Who.
A hat on top of another hat.
Don't. I'm done. I am done.
You are not.
Both of those hats are on top of a man's head. There he goes. He's gone.
Hey, you guys.
On Linty Hyena, loathe your ninny. Anyone, any hilt. Hello, I'm the Master. Come stay at my fancy little bread and breakfast. It's called, I've lost it, the Neatly Ahoy Inn.
So Tegan and Sarah are trying to climb up the mountain again. And they're like, well, we should just give up again. And they're like, fuck, just get in here and drop a rope ladder over. And they're like, oh, that's convenient. Tegan and Sarah climb up the rope ladder. They go in. They want to see the doctor. They're like, but he's sleeping. So they peek in and he seems to be doing okay. And the doctor's just asleep. And they head out. And then Adric walks out of the shadows. He's in the room with the doctor for some reason.
Can I make a pitch for an evil Adric name? And that is, I've got 2 pitches. Badric.
Yes.
And Madric. Oh, Bad Trick. There we go. Boom. Nailed it.
Everybody takes a nap. Everybody goes to sleep. The next day, Nyssa wanders off, sees the cabinet being moved, so she makes sure it goes to the doctor's room. And then while she's in the doctor's room, Adric appears behind her and is like, don't move. This is a stick up. he appears to her and says, hey, don't tell anyone about this. Bye. That's basically all he does. He's like, don't say I appeared here because I don't want the doctor should stay here and recuperate. He shouldn't be looking for me. And then he disappears. And then we see that the master has told Adric to do this. And he's like, now the doctor won't be meddling with my nefarious plans. So, and then we get another reference. We're at breakfast with Portreeve. And the doctor says, he's telling some stories. And Portreeve is like, you've been through a lot of, like, adventures. And we must be pretty dull in comparison. And he's like, oh, you mean like Ogrons and Daleks. But I think it's a good thing that you guys are not Ogrons or Daleks. It's nice to know that there are some aliens out there that aren't nasty.
Isn't it nice that everyone I'm with can be trusted and isn't evil or malevolent in any way, shape, or form? Boy, sure am glad I can trust everyone in this room. Haha, isn't that right? Definitely Anthony Ainley.
This is when I realized it, too, because he's not wearing the hat. So. So then the doctor is like, oh, that's some nice wall art you got there. And it's a big tapestry. Portreeve is like, oh yeah, that shows like stuff, like important events. It's tapped into, I don't know, it just shows cool shit. It shows the doctor in the box being carried by Tegan and Nyssa. And he's like, wait a second, there was somebody else. Who was it? And then
this leads into my absolute favorite scene. It's so cute.
He's just wandering through the city and he's like, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then this little girl comes up and goes, 3!
3, sir! No, it's literally 1, 2, 3, sir! It's absolutely Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
It is! I didn't even think about that. And then she's like, and then after that is 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then he's like, oh, slow down. You're blowing my mind.
Oh, slow down, Brainiac. Oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck me. I just discovered what 3 was. You are blowing my gourd right now.
Is this what you learn with all that books and stuff?
Books and such.
He's like, oh, 3. Adric, of course. The third wheel.
What happens is he goes, oh, whoa, that's a lot of numbers. You are smart and annoying, child. Wait, fuck, Adric. That's basically what happens.
Oh, right, he does say you should get a badge for mathematical excellence.
Mathematical excellence, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, slow down, child. One day you're going to be killed by Cybermen. Hang on a minute.
Speaking of books, Nyssa and Tegan have checked out a bunch of books from the library, history books, and has brought them back to the doctor's room. And he runs to him and is like, hey, where's Adric? And they're like, oh, we weren't supposed to say. And he's like, well, we gotta leave him. We gotta go rescue him. And I'm like, oh, fine. So they try to run out.
We weren't that worried about it.
Yeah, they really try to downplay the Adric thing.
The doctor's the only one who cares about rescuing Adric.
And rightly so.
So he's like, all right, let's run. And they're like, do you know the way out? And he's like, hey, as long as we keep going down, it should be fine. But they keep running into the same square where these women are doing laundry. Which there's also a pretty good joke there where he's like, which direction is the exit? And they all point in like different directions. And he's like, well, that's democracy for you.
It's a solid joke. And especially, like, we are 2 days from Brexit having happened, even though really it hasn't happened. The only thing that's changed is we no longer have ministers representing the UK in the European Parliament anymore. But, like, that feels so... That joke will never not be relevant to me. I love that joke, so I want to kiss that joke to death.
And you get it twice, because it also appears in the recap as well.
Yeah, the recap starts from there and gives us what feels like a full 7-minute chunk of the end of the previous episode. It's not. It's a big recap.
We had taken a break after finishing 4, and we did the wrap up, and then we did K9 and Company, and we'd watched a bunch of New Who that had aired. So I had completely forgotten about how long these recaps are.
Yeah, I feel like in the John Nathan Turner era, the recaps take up more time.
Why?
I mean, because time is expensive.
It's
true. Hard. It's hard filling time.
Making TV is a grueling, expensive, baffling process.
They can't get out. They keep going through this loop, and the doctor is starting to get worse because things are complex again. Numbers and books, and because of all this fuckery, he's like, take me back to the cabinet. So they take him back to his room, and the cabinet is gone. All they've left is the lid, I think?
Yeah, it's like stealing someone's jar of jam and you just leave the cap. So there's someone running around like with jam going, ooh, sticking their finger in and like licking it off their fingers. Ooh, I got the jam. I left them the lid. Ooh, I'm so precocious. Why did you do that?
It sounds like a personal experience.
I want my fucking jam back.
So he looks out the window and sees some recursive occlusion. Everything's fucked up and it looks like a Escher painting, which this episode is named after an Escher painting, but not one of his weird ones.
And then he very loudly says, "We're caught in a space-time trap!"
Credits. And that's the end of episode 3.
The DVD, by the way, has an alternate take of that where he's a little bit more subdued and the director says, "Could you crank it up a bit? Could you crank up the drama?" And then so you see the take that they use, and then you hear the director you say, "That was good, everyone," and Peter Davison goes, "That was far too over. That was over the top. That was overly dramatic. Why? They're not going to use that take. They use that take."
Sounds right. So that's the end of episode 3. We're now into episode 4, which I have called Geographical Delusions.
So the doctor's kind of incapacitated, so Nyssa and Tegan go to look for the cabinet. The doctor does what he can to, like, block out all the stuff. He takes a mirror. I guess because the, like, geometry is folding in on itself, that's not helping him. But he takes a mirror and he flips it because it's backed with silver and it's keeping the stuff out.
Like, werewolves.
Yeah. Basically, Nyssa and Tegan find the cabinet. The ladies who are all in the square have been using it to hold their laundry, I guess?
Sure.
That seems very rude. At this point, Tegan is like full on, "I need to talk to your manager." At just everyone.
Yeah, she goes full Karen on everyone that she can interact with in Castrovalva.
She basically tells everyone there's a plot and everyone's against the doctor and you're all in on it.
Which is a very normal and not at all paranoid thing to say.
The doctor is hanging out with Margrave and asks him to draw a map on the back of the mirror.
Yeah, he asks him to solve the maze on the back of a box of Fruit Loops, and he keeps saying, "Well, yeah, the exit's here, and wait a minute."
Which is a really neat idea, I think, of like, you can't see it until you map it all out. Where you're like, wait a minute, yeah, why is this all in one place? Because, like, they ask him and they're like, well, you can get to it from a bunch of different ways. That's how space works. And it's not till he maps it all out that he's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense.
Oh, that's not how space works.
Another guy whose name I can't remember also comes and can't make any sense of the map for the same reason.
His name's Ruther.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
And there's something about the books that they can't work out what's wrong about them.
He's like, I get an idea that some of these books are fake, and I can't put my finger on why. And he's like, I want to see Porter even talk to him about it. Put me in my cabinet!
To the box!
They put him in the box.
Or do they?
And, like, all the people, like, all the women and stuff are outside of the door, like, because the doctor's, like, in his room not feeling well. And they're all like, I don't know what you would say that they were doing. They're just waiting.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're gonna go take him to the portrait, but he's not feeling well, so we all have to help. And that seems to mean that they just follow behind him.
In this, like, funeral procession.
Yeah, it's a little like a mini parade.
But he's not in the box.
He's not in the box.
The box is full of the books. And he grabs the librarian to be like, hey, I've got theories.
And the librarian is the one who actually knows what's up with the books. All of the books are 500 years old, but they chronicle all of Castrovalva's history up until the present day.
But they're all filled with, like, lorem ipsum. He's like, yeah, I feel like this has been fabricated. And it's just lorem ipsum all the way on 500 years worth of very nicely bound pages.
I really like this thing, though, because they actually set that up in an earlier scene. He says, like, these are the history books that chronicles from all of history up till present day. And he also says that it's 500 years old. They say that earlier in the episode. And then when they say it again here...
You're like, oh yeah!
Shit, right.
That's not right!
Why would 500-year-old books have stuff about now? It felt very much like,
why
don't these statues have two heads? It felt very much like that. Like it hits you with something that should be very obvious, but you've just blocked it out because it was part of boring exposition.
You didn't super care at the time. This is the point where the master finally reveals himself and just throws an absolute hissy fit trying to get into the cabinet. I think it's Nyssa who's like, you can't open it. You can only open it from the inside. for science reasons, which just infuriates the master that anyone's, like, telling him science stuff.
He starts crowbarring at it, basically. He, like, pulls, like, a sticky thing from the fireplace, and it's like, well, I'm going to pry this thing open. And then he does eventually open it by just pushing it off the table, and it kind of collapses under its own nothing.
Yeah, you absolutely can't open it from the outside unless you smash it into bits. And then it magically opens.
Because he desperately wants the doctor to see the doctor one last time before he defeats him.
That's just kind of how he operates. The doctor breaks back in by breaking in through, I don't know, a big
Skylight.
Window.
Yeah. And he's like gathering people to join his army, sort of like, hey, you guys, look at this book. It's really old, but look, it says that yesterday you ate a burrito. And they're like, what?
How did they know about my burrito?
This book is ancient, but it also talks about the invention of Taco Bell. And Taco Bell didn't happen 500 years ago, so what up with that?
And then we find out that, I mean, part of his plan was that he got Adric with the computational block thing.
Adric made this whole place with math.
Yeah.
Wait, new title of episode 4, Comp Block.
And basically they find out that the tapestry that's on the wall is hiding Adric, who is behind it.
In the web. Which I really like that design, by the way.
Yeah. They're like it looks like little glass shards all around him.
Yeah.
And then the master's like, oh, well, you can't stop me. And then to prove that, he unmakes a dude, which is kind of
disturbing.
Yeah.
But then what should happen, but one of the Doctor's new allies in Castrovalva, full on, like, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls from a chandelier into the bindings that restrain Adric, leaving the Master, played by Antonioni, to yell, "My web! My web!" Which they definitely then loop that dialogue and use it later when the Master's trying to escape from Castrovalva and gets pulled apart by his own creations.
But yeah, the librarian, this guy who swings on the chandelier, kills himself somehow, but frees Adric. And the Master's like, well, bye! And TARDIS is out. His plans have gone awry, but the town has gone wonky.
It's folding in on itself so much that he couldn't leave.
Yeah, it just becomes pixely.
It's only pixely like that for one shot.
And no one can see their way out because everything's looping on itself. But because Adric created it, he can see the way out. Sure, why not?
That makes sense.
So he leads them out.
So basically they just keep the Master there, and it's kind of frightening. Like, It's kind of implied that they just, like, tear him apart.
Yeah,
the whole town.
The town just crushes in on him. I guess that's the last we'll see of the Master.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is it. Wild that this is his last ever adventure.
I mean, you just can't come back from something like that.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
So, like, the whole town, they get out, the town disappears. The Doctor puts the celery on his jacket.
Why not?
For reasons we won't know, I guess, until literally the end of his run.
For reasons that, in fairness, Peter Davison doesn't understand as he's doing it.
And then they tell Tegan that she didn't fly the TARDIS.
It's like, yeah, you know that thing the only thing you thought you did this entire serial? Nah.
No.
That was Adric.
That was Adric.
Turns out you're useless. Turns out you serve no purpose.
And apparently during this scene, according to the commentaries and whatnot, while they're having this discussion, Matthew Waterhouse, who plays Adric, is behind a tree just vomiting because he had drank too much the night before.
Wow.
Apparently he's doing it in that scene. He's just behind a tree throwing up, and they just kept acting so that they didn't have to redo the take.
Wow.
And apparently in that shot, he's just vomiting.
Gross.
Like, in the shot? Like, visible somewhere?
He's not visible, but, like, he's behind a tree while they're performing the scene, just vomiting.
Wow.
And they just kept going because they didn't want to ruin the take.
Amazing. Well, in fairness, the take was ruined already. What do I know?
And then the Doctor says, they get in the TARDIS, and he's like, whoever I feel like is absolutely splendid. And I like that line.
Yeah.
That was fun. Because he's the Doctor now.
Because a couple of times he says something about getting to feel like his old self again. He's like, no, my new self.
Ugh.
And that's it. That's the end of Castrovalva. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back for final thoughts.
This is a Nerd Atlanta flashback featuring comic book artist Lawson Chambers.
Whenever people reboot things, there's this instinct to make it darker and grittier. Yeah. And they're like, we don't need to see a darker, grittier Sonic the Hedgehog. That is wild to me. That, like, in our modern age, our trailer for a movie could come out and fans could go, no, we hate the way that little blue man looks. Change it.
New podcast episodes will be available soon.
And we're back. Toni, do you know what time it is?
It is the time in the episode where we do this bit, and I love it, and everyone loves it, and we all clap.
I don't like it.
You're not the only one.
We all clap.
Listen, hey, I'm of the opinion that a review should be impartial. You should be providing an impartial criticism of the thing you're watching, and I think it's unfair for you to talk about something using your own internal biases.
Thanks, Twitter.
You're welcome.
So besides that, what time is it?
It is time for our final thoughts.
Yay!
Final thoughts!
This is the first time that I've, like, watched one that I was like, man, this one's gonna be really good. I remember, I have, like, fond memories of this. And then watched it and was like, a lot of it's walking back and forth, isn't it? There's still a lot to really like in it. The Doctor's sick for the majority of it. Great. Good choice. Adric's good in it. Other good things happen in it. Probably. Shit, I don't know, I'm out of thoughts. This one was just fine. I like the hats.
Man, I had 2 hats. Okay, Ben, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts largely boil down to the fact that there's not a lot of story that happens, and it's spread out over basically just shy of 2 hours. And my immediate reaction to that, especially having been able to condense it myself down into 1 hour by watching it at double speed, there's less story that goes on here than goes on in episodes like Deep Breath or The Woman Who Fell to Earth. And I feel like that you could probably get a good 45-50 minute edit of this story by just trimming out the amount of walking they're doing, trimming out the amount of sitting and not doing anything. It's just, a lot of it feels like kicking a can down the hallway, and it doesn't feel like... There were some great character moments. I feel like the first 2 episodes are very, very much concerned with having Peter Davison not get to be his Doctor, which means you have an hour of a new Doctor that isn't getting to be the new Doctor. And in fact, I mean, that's a criticism I have of a lot of regeneration stories. As much as I love the Christmas Invasion, for example, that's a story where David Tennant is in bed for most of it, and you don't get to see David Tennant be David Tennant for the bulk of it. John Pertwee doesn't get to be the Doctor until his 3rd, or arguably the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th episode. And that's kind of, I guess, par for the course for a lot of regeneration episodes. This one just doesn't really do a lot to build on a lot of the momentum I get. And in fairness, it's hard to talk about momentum when it's something that happened a full year before this, but of Logopolis. It just feels like treading water. And in fairness, that's a criticism I have of a lot of the Peter Davison, Colin Baker era. A lot of it is just wheels spinning to get another episode's worth of material out of the show. It's something that becomes a problem during this era of the show.
Feels like where we are now.
I liked the episode in a way, and in a way I didn't. I did think there was a lot of filler, and like I do like the idea.
Yeah, the stuff that is there is fun.
Right.
It'd be great if there was more stuff.
Yeah, give us some meat.
Yeah, I think like this serial is actually full of like good ideas. I sometimes think the execution isn't so great. I feel like we should have got to Castrovalva a lot earlier. I do like kind of having an episode actually, it's almost an episode and a half entirely in the TARDIS. I kind of like that idea.
Getting to see more of it.
Yeah, I always like just sort of exploring the TARDIS. I mean, I don't think we do enough of it, so I'm always excited when we do.
I forget that it's big.
Yeah.
Like, you forget that it's not just that room.
So that's always a plus, and seeing the Zero Room and everything was really cool. And I like the idea of the Zero Room, the Zero Cabinet. I like the idea of the created city that's like folding in on itself. I like a lot of the ideas. I like the idea of Tegan.
Damning.
But sometimes the execution leaves a lot to be desired. So yeah, like you said, you don't really get a good sense of who the Doctor is yet. So I'm looking forward to getting to later in the season and getting a firmer grasp of who he is. And maybe trimming the fat of the companions. Listen, they're not the best. We've had a 3-person companion crew before, and this is definitely not the strongest version of that. Maybe not the weakest, but definitely not the strongest. So, yeah, it's not bad, and there's some really good ideas and some good jokes, good bits. But, I think this would have been a lot better as a 2-parter. Part 1 in the TARDIS, Part 2, Castrovalva.
I agree.
So that's my thoughts. Before we go, is there anything, Ben, that you would like to plug?
No, I already did it. He can't do it again.
Oh, no, I absolutely can. I can absolutely talk about the Game of Rassilon, a Doctor Who role-playing game, actual play podcast where we're playing the Doctor Who role-playing game. We release an episode every 2 weeks. We're currently working on our 2nd season. By the time this episode drops, we'll likely have finished our first 3-part serial, which features as a guest player David Blue, who sci-fi fans might recognize as Eli from Stargate Universe. Other than that, you can find out what I'm doing online. You can always go to thegameofrassilon.com to listen to the podcast. I'm available online at benpaddon.net. I'm also at Ben Paddon on Twitter, on Instagram. And I'm around, I'm online, and I'm pretty great.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
That's why we keep having you back on this program. Tony, anything you want to plug?
Same thing as always. Please watch my show. It's streaming now. I don't know if that's something that we've said before. I don't know if it's something that's been true since we've done the podcast.
You can watch it online right now. You don't have to have a Roku. Before you've had to have a Roku. Now you can just go to
WatchHeartlandTV.com. It's all on demand, so you can watch whatever episodes you want.
They're really good.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Some of them are good. Some of them are done.
One of them is about the Superman Museum. That's my favorite.
Superman Museum, Howard Finster's, that's the first episode, is one that I'm particularly proud of.
The Oak Ridge one's good.
I do like the Oak Ridge one, and I'm working on getting season 2 out. I'm not wrapped on production yet, but I'm working on that. I've got like 8 more episodes to shoot. But what we have done so far, the places, like the interviews and stuff, and the places we have gone so far, is I'm really, really excited about them. Like, the people that we talk to are just great, especially from places that you wouldn't expect. Like, we go to a lot of cool places. Passaquan's going to be in season 2.
Land of Oz,
yeah.
The Apron Museum.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, some of them are like really big places, and some of them are really small places, and like the small places are the ones that like I'm really excited about because of the interviews we got, and the Gord Museum is going to be really fun. That's a good interview, and I want to quit talking about it. I want to go and edit it, but please watch season 1. I put a lot of work into making it a thing, and I'm putting a lot of work into season 2. It's the Unseen World. We're Unseen World everywhere. If you would do me a favor, and if you have seen it, if you would like drop by on our social media and let us know. It's kind of the only way that my bosses know that people are watching it, so.
See Unseen World.
Yeah. Nobody follows me on Twitter. Please follow me on Twitter. I'm Forward Power.
FWDPWR.
FWDPWR. I'm funny sometimes. I'm not. Please just follow me on Twitter.
I have nothing to plug because everything I've been working on has been has fallen apart. So, yeah.
That's okay.
Well, my 2 clones will probably be dropping on YouTube soon, so keep an eye out for that. If you like this episode of the podcast, check out more on WatchYourAsslon.com, and be sure to rate and comment on our iTunes. It does iTunes magic.
Makes it easier for people to find us, and the more people find us and listen to my podcast, the more powerful I get as a human being.
Yeah, it's true. That's science.
If you'd like to help us out even more, you can go to WatchYourAsslon.com/support, and there you'll find a link to our Patreon page, which you can get to just by going to patreon.com/Watch-A-Thon. There you can donate a monthly amount to get all kinds of rewards, like day early episodes, uncut video of the podcast records, bonus episodes. We're actually watching, we're doing reviews on New Who right now. And
yeah, you can listen to our New Who reviews and watch both me and Joe totally miss the fact that the Master's TARDIS is the house in
like, why is there a house flying next to the plane? What is that about?
We have no idea.
We're dumb. Also on our support page is a link to our Amazon wish list where you can sponsor an episode of the podcast by purchasing the corresponding serial on DVD or Blu-ray for us. We'll mention you on the podcast and put your name on our Friends of Rassilon page. Speaking of, special thanks again to Matt Golden for sponsoring this episode.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
Golden!
You can check him out on MatthewGolden.net. And I also want to give a special shout out to Vincent E.L. for providing us with our theme song.
Thanks, Vince.
Vince, you rock.
You do. Check out more of their music on vincentel.bandcamp.com. And tune in next time when we talk about 4 to Doomsday. Why isn't it 5 to Doomsday? See, I've already got a negative comment about this episode. We haven't even watched it yet. Until then, keep calm and Rassilon.
Goodbye, and I love you in a platonic parasocial way.
Bye.
Well, whoever I feel like. It's absolutely splendid.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.